The new president of the Hunters Association Ox. Excitement buzzed in the air as top officials gathered for a super important meeting. The Hunters Association of Korea needed a new leader, and everyone was curious about who it would be. Yen Newsletter. The big conference room was packed with over 30 important people, including the vice president, heads of different branches, and leaders from every department. Each person had as much power and influence as top government officials or CEOs of huge companies. But despite their high status, everyone in the room looked worried. The room felt heavy with tension, as everyone discussed the big decision ahead. The vice president stood up, his voice serious. "It's time to pick our new leader," he announced. Faces turned pale. Some swallowed hard, others let out quiet gasps. The group's choice would affect not just their organization, but the whole country, especially since there were so many new hunters and mysterious gates popping up everywhere. The vice president closed the folder in front of him, signaling that what he was about to say was more important than anything written there. After talking it over with the board, he began, "We think Director Jin-Woo should be our next president." This was news to Jin-Woo. He hadn't seen this coming at all. Jin-Woo's head snapped toward the vice president, his eyes screaming a silent, "Why me?" without saying a word. The VP leaned in, grabbing the mic tightly, his gaze locked on Jin-Woo. "Director Woo has tons of real-world experience from working as President Go's top assistant," he said. "He also has what it takes to lead other hunters." And honestly, that was totally true. President Go really respected Jin-Woo, who had chosen to join the association even though he could have worked for bigger guilds. He was an A-rank hunter, super strong and experienced. In fact, if his magic power were just a bit higher, he might have been the second S-rank hunter in the association, right after President Go himself. With 4 years of real-world experience, Jin-Woo was one of the best A-rank hunters out there. When Jin-Woo's name first came up, people started whispering and wondering why he was picked. But as the vice president explained the board's decision, the quiet talk died down. There was no one better to lead the group of hunters at the association than Jin-Woo. But when they asked him to take charge, he wouldn't accept the offer. "I'm not qualified for this role," he said. "There are others way more experienced than me. Plus, am I even old enough for this?" Jin-Woo was actually in his mid-30s. But he still felt unsure about taking on such a big responsibility. Even though he had gained lots of valuable experience during his 4 years on the surveillance team, Jin-Woo still felt he was too inexperienced to lead the whole organization. At least, that's how he saw it. "Vice President," Jin-Woo began, scanning the room and locking eyes with each leader. "There's you, the board members, and all the other directors." He paused for a moment before turning back to the vice president with a serious look on his face. "How could you possibly think I'm good enough to replace President Go, when there are so many amazing people here?" Jin-Woo asked, his voice laced with disbelief. The vice president glanced around the room, then let out a deep breath silently. He had known there would be doubts about Jin-Woo stepping into the role, but he hadn't expected Jin-Woo to doubt himself so strongly. Without a word, the vice president turned off his microphone. The room fell silent as he prepared to share the real reason behind recommending Jin-Woo. Everyone leaned in, eager to hear more. The vice president began, "None of us, including me, have the influence you do over Korea's strongest." It was clear who he meant. Korea's strongest was a well-known member of the Hunters Association. This person had already shown immense power not just in Korea, but also in Japan, and the US. It's already happening a bit, but clearly, moving forward, the Hunters Association can't run smoothly without Jin-Woo. Imagine this, a national-level hunter, who can command an entire country's resources. But Jin-Woo brought such a powerhouse to their knees. So how much control can the association really have over someone as strong as Jin-Woo? They had to nicely request Jin-Woo for help, and wait for his reply. The group needed someone who could talk to him easily, just like President Go did when he asked Jin-Woo to save the Jeju Island team from a risky situation. Jin-Woo was Jin-Woo's best buddy in their group, making him the perfect choice for president. When the vice president suggested Jin-Woo, everyone agreed because it made sense. No one had any objections. Everyone in the big conference room started nodding their heads, agreeing with what he was saying. The vice president made it super clear he wasn't forcing anyone to agree. Just like with Hunter Sung, they were calling the shots. But he asked them to really think about their offer. The room fell silent for a moment, and everyone's eyes locked onto Jin-Woo. Their stares were bugging him, like they were trying to see right through him. Jin-Woo opened his mouth cautiously, darkness started. But before he could finish, something shocked him. OMG. Jin-Woo blurted out. It was a phrase he'd heard Gina use all the time, but he never thought he'd say it himself until now. His thumbs flew across his phone screen as he read an article that had caught his attention. The headline nearly made his eyes pop out. Jin-Woo named president of the Hunters Association. He's taking over after the late President Gun Hee-go. At first, seeing Jin-Chul's name trending had worried Jin-Woo. He'd assumed something bad had happened. But then he read the good news and let out a huge sigh of relief. Could it really be true? Jin-Woo, someone he knew pretty well, was now leading the Hunters Association. It felt surreal. He grinned from ear to ear, clearly thrilled for Jin-Chul, as he flipped off his phone and tossed it lightly over his shoulder. The ant soldier behind him snatched it out of the air. Just in time, he saw the ant stuff the phone into its bag, then gave a heads up. You've got some big shoes to fill, compared to your predecessor, he said. Since Jin-Yo was busy being the vice president of their guild, this little ant had been chosen instead, to carry the luggage. The ant dipped its head shyly. Good, Jin-Woo said with a grin, giving the ant soldier a friendly pat on the shoulder. He turned around, ready to get back to hunting after lunch. But then, not these again. Jin-Woo groaned, rubbing his forehead. In front of him was a thick wall of trees that seemed to go on forever. Before, this had been a village destroyed by giants, but now it looked like something straight out of the Amazon rainforest. You didn't have to be a pro hunter to tell something was off here. Weirdly though, the animals didn't act like they noticed anything strange. Half-eaten animal carcasses were scattered everywhere, attracting swarms of buzzing flies. Jin-Woo clicked his tongue in annoyance at the flies circling the bones. Then he picked up a stone from the ground and threw it. Whoosh! This was no ordinary stone. It wasn't just any S-rank hunter who threw a stone. It was Jin-Woo's song. Crack! The rock smacked one of those tree-like magic beasts right in the face. Its eyes popped open, and its expression twisted like it was super annoyed. The beast stood up tall, and started charging toward Jin-Woo. Krayla, who knew even plants get mad when you hit them? Jin-Woo quickly summoned a demon monarch's dagger and charged forward to face the towering tree monster. The massive tree swung its thick branches at him, but they moved so slowly that Jin-Woo could easily dodge them while studying the tree's unusual face. On the other hand, the tree couldn't keep up with Jin-Woo's fast and nimble movements. Its slow reactions made it an easy target. Every time a branch slammed into the ground, it left a deep dent, but Jin-Woo frowned in disappointment. For something so big, it wasn't as strong as he'd expected. The tree monster looked intimidating because of its size, but compared to other giant magic beasts, its attacks were surprisingly weak. The tree-type beasts had one major advantage that made up for their flaws. Jin-Woo tightened his grip on his dagger and went to town, stabbing the tree monster over and over. The tree screamed non-stop, but it wouldn't go down without a fight. Jin-Woo dodged them quickly as he walked up to the tree. He put the dagger away in his inventory and focused his energy into his fist. Then, with a loud crack, he punched the tree once. The tree bent over and flew backward. The magic beast let out a screech of pain, thrashing on the ground, but it still dragged its broken body toward Jin-Woo using one arm. Whoa, tree-type magic beasts were super tough. They had just been discovered in Japan and were super tough. This one didn't stop until Jin-Woo swung at it like a bunch of times. Ugh. With one last burst, the dead tree spewed nasty sap from its mouth. Guff. Jin-Woo covered his nose. That all bothered him way more than how tough it was. As one ant soldier busily extracted essence stones from the fallen tree, Jin-Woo scowled at the remaining trees. Of still so many left. It hadn't been long since the dungeon broke, but these magic beasts had already grown into a mini forest. Jin-Woo frowned as he checked out the situation, but humans are smart. And since he'd already figured out their weakness, Jin-Woo had a trick up his sleeve. Oh, I knew this would happen. Hick, he grinned, summoning a few of his best soldiers with a wave of excitement. Come on out. Fang stepped forward, followed by 3 mage soldiers who looked like they'd been ready the whole time. Keeping these 4 close while sending others to fight elsewhere was definitely the right move. Begin, Jin-Woo shouted. Fang and the mages, who had just made themselves bigger, unleashed a fiery attack. The forest erupted in a cacophony of sounds. Whoosh, boom, crash. The trees flailed as flames engulfed them, their branches crackling furiously. Even though they weren't dry, the magical fire devoured them swiftly, leaving nothing but ash behind. Even the stinky sap evaporated quickly because of the heat, so Jin-Woo could hang back at a safe distance and relax. He couldn't help but smile as everything went down. Exactly like he'd planned. The system messages started popping up non-stop. You have defeated an enemy. They're free. You have defeated another one. And they just kept coming. Sure, the magic beast spawning super fast was bad news, in some ways, but it worked out for Jin-Woo because he was racking up tons of experience points. That ping sound was louder than ever. You have leveled up. Jin-Woo grinned as he checked his stats to see what he'd gained. A stat window. F Tondain. F Jin-Woo sung. F Den. F Tondain. F Tondain. F Tondain. Job. F Tondain. F Tondain. Titles. F Tondain. F Tondain. Cool titles. His stats looked awesome too. F Tondain. F Tondain. F Tondain. F Tondain. 6 Tondain. F 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 Tondain. Jin-Woo had hit level 13-3 super fast, thanks to his soldiers tackling raids all over Japan. They were unstoppable. The flood of magical creatures through the gates was awesome. Most of Jin-Woo's powers had soared past 300. With just 2 points left to reach his goal for perception, he decided to focus on that after tomorrow's daily quest. With a big smile, he closed the stat window. Sure, there was talk of an upcoming war with the Giant King and some big plan from President Go, but worrying about it now wouldn't change anything. Jin-Woo stayed sharp, ready for anything that came his way. For now, his main focus was leveling up. Suddenly Baru, who had been leading the ant army in battles far from Jin-Woo, reached out to him. "My king," Baru said hesitantly, "if I may ask something of you." Jin-Woo wondered what this could be about. Jin-Woo's eyes lit up with curiosity as he read the message on his screen. He quickly typed back, "What's up?" The reply came swiftly, shrouded in mystery. "I don't have anyone else to turn to. If you ever need help, contact me through the Hunters Association of Korea." Little did Jin-Woo know, his recent interview had sparked a wildfire of interest. The Hunters Association was buzzing with questions from hunters all over the globe. Some were so eager they snuck into Korea, just to meet him. Among these shadowy visitors was Lennart Nierman, Germany's toughest hunter. It seemed Jin-Woo was now the go-to guy for top-notch hunters, and even some national-level heroes. No way could he stand up to something like that. But Lennart wasn't one to panic. This quiet, thoughtful guy didn't let fear take over. Instead, he made a smart choice: trust Jin-Woo in his plan. So off he went on an unexpected trip to Korea. Lennart stepped off the plane at Incheon Airport and took a deep breath. This is what Korea smells like. He was super stoked to be in Asia for the first time. As he walked through customs, he couldn't help but ask the officer, "Is this where Jin-Woo Sung lives?" The officer looked confused for a second before nodding. "Oh, you mean Jin-Woo Sung?" Lennart grinned from ear to ear. He was one step closer to meeting the strongest hunter in the world. Lennart had almost grabbed the chance to talk to Jin-Woo during the International Guild Conference banquet, but he missed it. Now, his heart was pounding with excitement at the thought of meeting him here. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. Suddenly, the big guy right behind him lost his temper. "Get out to my way if you're gonna take your sweet time," the man growled. Lennart's face twisted into a scowl in an instant. Who did this guy think he was? Lennart pulled off his shades, he'd been wearing them just in case, and spun around, ready to give the stranger a piece of his mind. "Oh yeah?" Lennart challenged, glaring up at the man, who was easily a foot taller than him. The stranger smirked and removed his own sunglasses. "Get out of my way." Lennart froze as soon as he realized who it was. He stammered, "Please go ahead." "Thomas," Andre pushed Lennart aside with his broad shoulders and walked to the front of the line. Laura then apologized to the German hunter. The customs officer felt like he couldn't breathe when he saw Thomas. Thomas Andre was a famous hunter known for being the best in the world. With his super tall height, Thomas had earned the nickname Goliath, which totally made sense. He noticed the officer's face turned pale, so he put on his sunglasses, cracked a smirk, and asked, "Is this the land owned by Jin-Woo-sung?" Just then Baru, who was leading an army of shadowy ant soldiers far away, contacted him suddenly out of nowhere. Jin-Woo wondered what Baru, his strongest warrior, wanted to say. "What's up?" Jin-Woo thought back, curious about what Baru needed. Baru said hesitantly, "Sir, could you please send those escaped creatures my way?" He meant the magic beasts that had broken out of dungeons and were causing trouble in their world. Baru really wanted to handle the magic beasts on his own. Greed, who shared the same rank as Baru, couldn't meet his gaze, so this wasn't about the ants rebelling. Jin-Woo thought for a moment. Before getting an idea, he felt something familiar, like when he transformed, and it grew stronger with each defeat. His hunch was spot on. Leveling up Baru's big moment. Since joining the Shadow Army, Baru had been on the front lines, battling more enemies than any other soldier. Now his time to level up had finally arrived. Seeing how much stronger high-ranking soldiers like Igris and Iron had become after their promotions made this extra exciting. This was awesome news. Even before becoming a shadow soldier, Baru was already so strong. He could take on S-rank hunters with ease. Talk about cool. Jin-Woo held the highest rank among all soldiers. He was excited to see what would happen next with Baru's promotion. Baru thanked Jin-Woo, ready to return his soldiers. Jin-Woo smiled, deciding to keep his army instead. His soldiers, about 100 strong, quickly responded to his call. Igris was in charge of the knights, while Fang commanded the high orc warriors. Jima guided the Naga forces. No, Six directed the giant troops, Tank led the massive ice bear squad, and Greed oversaw the rest of the soldiers. Every eye in the entire army was fixed on Jin-Woo, making it feel like he could hear their silent roar. He seemed to savor the electric tension around him before giving his order. "Everyone, pull back." Then, with a calm tone, he added, "Return to me." At his signal, the Shadow Army sprang into action, retreating step by step. The soldiers quickly returned from the shadows and gathered around Jin-Woo's feet. One of them, sounding surprised, asked, "My king, why did you call us back?" Jin-Woo smiled at the puzzled ant. "You and I will handle the rest of the magic beasts together," he said. This was the best way to help Baru grow stronger faster. Jin-Woo was using a strategy called power leveling. Something gamers use when a high-level player helps a lower-level one level up quickly. Jin-Woo was thinking about teaming up with Baru to make their hunts more effective and help Baru gain experience faster. If they explored dungeons together, leveling Baru up would be a breeze. It wouldn't be as efficient as sending shadow soldiers to handle those areas, but Baru's growth mattered most. "My king." Baru's voice trembled with emotion, unable to finish his sentence. Jin-Woo's eyebrow shot up in surprise. Baru had been acting super dramatic lately, probably because he'd been sneaking in episodes of his mom's favorite TV shows while keeping watch over her and his sister. Once all the shadow soldiers gathered around, Jin-Woo asked, "Hey, does anyone else here get that weird feeling when their level is about to boost?" The room was silent. No one had an answer. Leveling up wasn't easy, and you needed super sharp awareness to even know when it was happening. Baru seemed to be the only soldier who could tell Jin-Woo when he was about to level up. Jin-Woo figured that must be why she was so special. But then Jum, another shadow soldier, appeared out of nowhere. That totally ruined Baru's dream of hunting alone with her master. Baru looked a bit let down, but Jin-Woo's face lit up with excitement. "Great." Igris knelt before him as he always did. Usually Jin-Woo felt a little uneasy with how formal Igris was, but it had been a while, and the sight felt comforting now. Jin-Woo had been waiting for this moment for Igris to level up, and he couldn't wait any longer. "Let's get started," he said with a grin as he brought out the Demon Monarch's dagger. All around them, tiny sprouts were pushing through the ground where they had burned those tree-like magic beasts earlier. The spawn rate was super scary.
Dada.
Gaia. After this, there were another 40 dungeon breaks to handle. With just 3 of them dealing with everything, there was no time to lose. Jin-Hyo felt more at home in the Ajin Guild than his actual house. But right now, every minute felt like an hour. Jin-Hyo glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 4:10 p.m., so more than 2 hours had passed since that man arrived. He gulped nervously, hoping he hadn't been too loud. Then he snuck a glance at the visitor. Their eyes met, and the man flashed him a grin over his sunglasses. Startled, Jin-Hyo forced a quick smile and looked away fast. Jin-Hyo was drenched in sweat as he grabbed his phone to call his boss, Jin-Woo again. The ringtone echoed loudly, shridding, ridding, but there was no answer. It had been 2 days since Jinho last heard from Jin-Woo, and things weren't about to change anytime soon. Jinho pressed his lips together tightly, his mind racing with worry. Around him the employees of Ocean Guild, who had joined because they believed in the organization's potential, followed his lead. They too fell silent, their faces filled with unease, as they waited for news that never came. The room felt really awkward, and they were all silent, like they'd planned it that way. You couldn't really blame them. Anyone in their shoes would have done the same. After all, the guy sitting in the corner of the office was kind of a big deal. He was one of the most powerful hunters in the world, but he also had the worst temper imaginable. Thomas Andre was so intimidating that after being beaten by their guild president and ending up in the hospital, everyone around him walked on eggshells. Not a single person dared to laugh or chat when he was near. Meanwhile, the world's top hunter had come to the Ocean Guild to meet Jin-Woo, and Vice President Jinyo along with the rest of the guild members were nervous wrecks. Just as Jinho was thinking about calling Jin-Woo one more time, the office doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Everyone quickly turned to see who had walked in. Jinho's eyes lit up in surprise, and he jumped from his seat. "Boss," he exclaimed, sounding as desperate as everyone else felt. No wonder reporters had been swarming the building all day. Jin-Woo locked eyes with Thomas Andre, who was smiling like he knew something exciting. From the look on Thomas's face, he didn't seem mad at Jin-Woo. So why was he here? Before Thomas could say anything, Jinyu stepped in. "Boss, why was it so hard to reach you?" Jinyu asked. "I was a little busy," Jin-Woo replied. Jinyu glanced at Jin-Woo's clothes. They were all beat up from his battles. Jinyu's eyes widened as memories of their epic adventures flashed through his mind. If the boss had been so caught up in hunting these past 2 days that he couldn't even call, then, wow, how many monsters must have bitten the dust this time? Just thinking about it sent chills down. Right then Thomas stood up like he didn't have a care in the world, and walked over to Jin-Woo with a big smile spreading across his face. He was super tall and closed the gap between them in just a few steps, stopping right in front of the Korean hunter. Oh man, were they about to fight right there? The guild employees held their breath nervously, unsure what was going on between their boss and Thomas. Their hearts pounded so hard that Jin-Woo's ears started ringing. "Hey Mr. Sung," Thomas said, holding out his hand. Jin-Woo smiled and shook hands with Thomas, but then Thomas's smile disappeared, and he looked surprised all of a sudden. How is this possible? Thomas thought to himself. Something about Jin-Woo seemed different. It was hard to explain, but this wasn't the same guy he'd met before. Maybe it was the way he acted or carried himself. One thing for sure, Jin-Woo's clothes looked way messier than when they first met, or even when they saw each other at the banquet. Even though Jin-Woo didn't look that scary at first, Thomas could tell he seemed tougher than before. There was a solid calm about him that Thomas had noticed earlier, but now it felt even stronger. Was this even possible? Definitely not. Thomas had never seen anything like this before. He could tell Jin-Woo was somehow stronger because of his level up, but he couldn't figure out exactly how or why. The handshake ended before Thomas could figure out what was happening. Jin-Woo asked, "Hey, what brings you to Korea?" Thomas, who had been spaced out, snapped back to reality with a grin. "Didn't you promise we'd grab a bite once my hand healed?" He held up his left hand, now fully recovered, and waved it with a smile. Jin-Woo glanced at his watch.